Thompson. I serve as a news chief here at NASA's Stennis Space Center near Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. I'm standing not too far from the Fred Haise test stand. This is where NASA tests RS-25 engines to help power the SLS, or Space Launch System rocket, on Artemis missions back to the moon as we prepare for future journeys to Mars. I'm joined by one of our NASA test engineers and test conductors, Derek Zacher. Derek has agreed to answer some of the questions we've received during recent live stream broadcasts of RS-25 tests. Derek, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Before we get on to the questions, I'd like to ask you to share a little bit about yourself and how you became a test engineer and conductor here at NASA Stennis.
All right, well, got interested in aerospace as a child. I was more interested in the jet engines and aircraft than I was rockets and space. Went to school down at Embry-Riddle down in Daytona Beach, and that was close enough to Kennedy that I was able to go down and see a bunch of launches, and got really excited about it. Had an opportunity to come down here to Stennis, working for Orbital Sciences on their Antares program, and then when after our first launch there, I was able to get a job here in NASA, working with the team here on the stand testing the RS-25.
Thank you, Derek. We're so glad you're part of the NASA Stennis family. Now, let's get on to the questions. And the first question relates to an upcoming RS-25 test on the Fred Haise test stand. Somebody wants to know what the engine being tested is for, whether it's a new engine or a heritage space shuttle engine.
All right, this engine here is manufactured of all new components. It's part of our certification test series. What we did was we have about 12 engines left that are going to work through Artemis 2 through 4, and then we have to utilize new manufactured engines. So we are using new techniques for manufacturing, new materials that either weren't available at the time when these engines were first manufactured, or weren't suitable for the reusable aspects of the Space Shuttle main engine. So these tests are to verify that those changes don't impact the performance of the engine, that it still is suitable to meet our needs and is still reliable to get our astronauts safely into orbit.
And those new engines are being produced by the lead engines contractor, Aerojet Rocketdyne, is that correct?
Yes, sir, correct. All the components are manufactured out at their facility in California, and then they are shipped here to Stennis, where they are assembled and then brought up to the stand to be tested. And after we are finished testing them, when we get to the flight engines after testing, they will be sent down to Michoud Flight Facility outside of New Orleans, where they will be integrated into the next SLS core stage.
Well, thank you, Derek. Let's get on to the next question. And somebody wants to know what weather conditions permit a test. For instance, can you test during a thunderstorm?
All right, we can test pretty much any time. There are activities prior to the test that require our personnel to be outside doing setups and inspections. Obviously, they can't be outside during a thunderstorm for those. We have a lightning detection system on our facility that will alert us if there are lightning strikes within 5 to 10 miles, and in those situations, our people can't go outside. Down here in Mississippi, we're lucky that most of the time the weather comes here in the afternoon and the mornings are pretty clear. So when we know weather's coming in the afternoon, we'll try to pull all of the setups and all of the inspections forward in the count to try to get them out of the way before the weather comes in. We have backup generators that provide power, that in the event that we have a lightning strike that knocks out commercial power, we'll still have power to run all of our systems. And then in the event that in the last couple of minutes before a test, when we're trying to do our final inspections, if we can't send people outside to do those, most of the areas that we need to look at have adequate coverage via video camera that we can do an inspection that way. At the end of the day, though, what it comes down to is if the test director feels that it is the risk level has elevated to such a level that it's not acceptable, he can choose to scrub the test.
Well, that's great information, Derek. Thank you. Now, the next question is, how loud and powerful are these RS-25 tests? For instance, will they set off nearby car alarms?
All right, well, these are pretty loud tests. We don't allow too many people outside of enclosed structures close to the stand, but anybody within about 200 yards or so wear and hearing protection because it's above our acceptable limits. I have never heard of a car alarm going off out here, but on that note, you know, we're a pretty secure area out here, so most people don't even lock their cars when they're out here, so they're probably not even armed. Now, I have heard some friends that live, you know, 15, 20 miles away from here that tell me that when the clouds are low and the weather is just right, they can actually hear us from, you know, 15, 20 miles away. So it is pretty loud.
Thanks, Derek. And of course, if the car alarm went off, you probably wouldn't hear it over the sound of the test.
Probably not.
So the next question we have is, how much thrust does the RS-25 engine produce?
All right, the RS-25 engine produces 470,000 pounds of thrust. That's vacuum rated, so that's at altitude. That's at 100% of the rated power level. Now, on the Fred Hayes stand, in preparation for Artemis missions, we are testing these engines to 113% of its rated power level. And at that setting, it produces approximately 530,000 pounds of thrust. To give you a little bit of idea of perspective here, that's about 15 times the combined thrust of the two engines on an F-22 fighter.
Thanks, Derek. Now, speaking about the thrust, someone wants to know, how hot and fast is the engine plume during a test?
All right. The gas coming out of the nozzle of the engine is at about 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's moving at about a little over 14,000 feet per second, or over 9,000 miles per hour. The heat is so much that we use about 230 to 240,000 gallons per minute of water in our deflector to cool it and to keep the engine from damaging our facility.
Thanks, Derek.